In the event a surface needs to be shown on production drawings, you'll probably need to label the contour elevations. Using Civil 3D, contours can be labeled with just a couple clicks of the mouse. In this lesson, we'll learn how to label contour elevations. On my screen is an existing condition surface that needs some labels. To label the contours, I will zoom in, I'll select the surface, and then I'll come over to the far left side of the ribbon and I'll open the Add Labels menu. Right here we can see all of the labels that we can assign to surfaces. I'm going to choose Contour Multiple, and then I'm going to turn off my running object snaps momentarily. I'll pick a point on screen, I'll drag out a line, and then I'll click again. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape a couple times. As you can see, every contour that was crossed by my line now has a label. Let's create a couple more labels. Once again, I'll select the surface, I'll come up to Add Labels, and I'll choose Contour Multiple. I will then click down here, I'll drag out a line and click. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape a couple times. After labeling contours, you can see the label line on screen. If I select this, I get access to the grips. I can then use the grip to adjust the location of the labels, or I could drag this out to add a few more or take some labels away if I want to. Let me press Escape. We'll pan this up, and we'll look at another label method. I'll select the surface and I'll open up the Add Labels menu. Let's look at Contour Single. Using this method, I can simply select the contours I want to label. Each one that I click on will be labeled. I'll press Escape a couple times when I'm finished. These are nice. We can even copy these. If I launch the copy command, I can select a label, press Enter. I'll just pick it up from some point here in the middle, and you can see that I can place this to any other contour. Civil 3D will automatically pick up the appropriate elevation. Now, there's no magic to a single label. If I select one of these, you can see a single label is nothing more than a multiple label with a short line segment. If I click one of these grips, I can convert any single label into a multiple. Let's zoom out, and we'll look at one more method. Once again, I'll choose the surface. This time I'm going to use Contour Multiple at Interval. I'll zoom in and I'll drag out another label line and click. Then I'm asked for the interval along contour. For this example, I'm going to type in 50 feet and I'll press Enter, and then I'll press Escape a couple times. Using this method, Civil 3D will label the contours crossed by the line, and then it will measure in either direction whatever the interval is and add additional labels. So in this case, it's going every 50 feet in either direction of that line and placing more labels. Using this method can be a really quick way to label large surfaces. Now let's talk a little bit about formatting. First, I'd like to talk about this label line. It obviously displays on screen. It'll show up on the plots as well. Let me show you how to turn this off. If I select the label line and go over to the Properties palette, right here I can change the Display Contour Label Line property to False. I'll press Escape when finished. Even though the line doesn't display on screen, if I select a label, I still get access to the grips where I can make changes. At this point, you may be wondering if I have to do that for all of the other labels in this drawing. And the answer is no. If I select one of these labels, I can right-click, and in the menu, I'll choose Select Similar. This selects all of the other contour labels in the drawing. I can then come over to the Properties palette and change the Display Contour Label Line property to False. Now, you may be wondering, is there a way we can turn that feature off so we never have to worry about it? And the answer is yes. This is something you'd want to do in your template. If I go to the Settings tab and right-click on the Surface category, I'll choose Edit Feature Settings, and inside the Contour Labeling Defaults group, right here, I can permanently turn off the display of the contour label lines. Let's click OK. I'll pan the drawing up. From now on, if I add contour labels to this drawing, the label line will no longer display. Next, I'd like to talk about label formatting. Notice these are all labeled to 2 decimal spaces. Normally when we label contour elevations, we want these to the even foot. Knowing what we know now, we can fix this. Let me select one of the labels, and I'll go over to the Properties palette. Right here we can see the label styles being used. This one's for the major contour labels, and this one's for the minor. Let me press Escape to deselect. Now that I know the label styles, here in the Settings tab, I'm going to expand the Surface category, and then I'll expand Label Styles. I'll come down to Contour. We can drag this out a little wider. Right here we can see the label styles in use. Let's edit the major labels first. I'm going to right-click on that label style, and I'll choose Edit. Hopefully this dialog box looks familiar. This is the same dialog box we used when we created point labels. I'm going to go to the Layout tab. This is where the label is created. I'll click in the Contents field, and then I'll click the ellipsis button. I'll select the programming code that represents the surface elevation, and I'll change its precision to the even foot. I will then click the arrow to overwrite the programming code. I'll click OK and OK. And you can see in every instance the major labels have been updated. Let's fix the minor labels. I'll right-click on that label style and choose Edit. I'll click in the Contents field. Then I'll choose the ellipsis button. I'll select the programming code for that label, and we'll change its precision to the even foot. I'll overwrite the original, click OK and OK. Let's look at one last thing. When I labeled this surface, I selected it and I came over and grabbed the appropriate label from the Add Labels menu. This method is great. The only thing I'm missing here is the ability to select the label style. If I want to do that, I'll use this option at the top, Add Surface Labels. This is kind of a generic way to label surfaces. If I choose this method, it'll bring up the Add Labels dialog box where I can select the feature that I'm labeling. In this case, I'm labeling a surface. For label type, I'll choose Contour Multiple. Now I can select my desired style. Let's assume I'm labeling proposed contours. So for the major labels, I'll choose the Proposed Major Label style. And then for the minors, I'll choose the Proposed Minor Label style. I will then click Add. And I can drag out a label line. Press Escape a couple times when I'm finished. And we can see the difference between the two label styles. One final thing, if you would happen to label contours using an incorrect style, we can fix this using the Match Prop tool. I'm going to type Match Prop. I'll press Enter. I'll select my desired contour labels, and then I'll select the labels I want to change. I'll press Escape when I'm finished. I'm going to close the Add Labels dialog box, and then we'll zoom out and center the drawing on screen. When it comes to labeling surface contours, you'll find you can label a lot of data with just a couple clicks of the mouse. Once created, these labels are essentially maintenance-free because they will update automatically if the surface data or plot scale changes. This means you can label a surface or any other Civil 3D object one time and then let the labels take care of themselves.